Hello, and thank you for joining us once again for this, the final part of the Sanofi and Regeneron Alliance sponsored podcast, 5 years of World AD Day, with myself, Siân Jones, and Professor Stephan Weidinger. In the previous episode, Professor Weidinger and I looked at how a crucial holistic approach to AD management is due to the substantial mental health burden that patients experience, as well as what we can do to approach and initiate those meaningful conversations with policymakers to inspire genuine action. So in the final episode of the series, we're going to be looking ahead to the future, exploring what AD care may look like in the next 5 years, and more importantly, what can be done to make this a reality. Professor, thank you. Welcome back. Great to see you again. Of course, we talked about multidisciplinary care a lot, didn't we, in the second episode? Let's talk about the 5 years ahead. We talked about in your organisation where this is happening and the difference that it's making. What do we need to do to make sure in the next 5 years that a true multidisciplinary approach is possible, not just within your organisation, but globally?
Well, to be honest, I think in the end it's always about money, right? So what we need to do is we need to make policymakers understand the complexity of atopic dermatitis and the huge burden the disease confers to the patients, and that more investment is needed to improve patient care by, for example, building such multidisciplinary care models. And this means that we need to present convincing data to the policymakers and constantly make them aware about the disease and its impact on patients and families. And that it's important to really invest into better AD care models.
Absolutely, but so often it is about money, isn't it? So how can we take a sort of innovative approach to raising the funds to make this happen?
Well, what I could imagine is models where patient organizations and specialists, maybe through their societies, work together to engage with policymakers and to really drive changes. That would certainly be one way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because what you're achieving, through that holistic approach is huge, is making a huge difference. And I imagine many people listening to this will think, this is what I want. How can I strive to make that change happen where I live?
Yeah, I think we really need to create synergism across the various stakeholders and to have a unified voice.
Yeah.
If one expert says something that might be interesting, but it's not sufficient to change politics, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. So work to be done. But what more do you think the AD community as a group could be striving to change in the next 5 years?
Well, I think we need to keep on and continue education of physicians on the disease burden, on the comorbidities, on the mental health issues. We need to make them understand the different perceptions of the disease across patient groups and the nuances between the patient groups. I think we should communicate more about the best practice examples that we have seen, for example, in the quality of care initiative, because they can inspire other centers.
Absolutely. So give us some examples where you've seen best practice where that has, that's carried through to other organizations.
Well, one are these multidisciplinary care models.
Yes.
But there were many other examples identified in that study. For example, modern ways of communication with patients. So teledermatology was one thing, virtual consultations, for example, patient portals through which they can communicate with, for example, the multidisciplinary teams or the nurse that is taking care of them, or also the physicians. We have seen joint educational events between the physicians at centers and then patient organizations, for example. So regional AD days, something like that.
Yeah.
Some centers use structured educational programs, eczema schools that they offer to their patients. In fact, there is a huge report about the quality of care initiative that is publicly available through the internet, and it is very informative. And I think we need to communicate more about that report and the most important findings in that report.
Absolutely. So loads of tools available. I was interested in you mentioning telemedicine, because that's been coming, for quite a while, but that's already up and running and making a difference.
Yeah, and in particular, during the COVID pandemic, in many centers, that was one way to keep up good quality of patient care.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the policy makers, because, there is a lot to be done in this area. What more can we do in regard to policy makers to increase the recognition and understanding of AD at a policy level?
Well, there are various things that are important. So you need good data to convince policymakers, first of all. We already have a wealth of data, but I think we need to go on doing research. And then the second thing is to prepare the results from research in a way that policymakers can understand. To this end, we need to engage with the policymakers, first of all, and I think this cannot be done through a single expert. This would have to be a joint initiative of maybe societies and patient organizations, maybe also supported by industry. One good example, in fact, that I know quite well, because members of our department were involved, comes from the psoriasis field. Psoriasis patient organizations and specialists together approached the WHO, and in the end, a kind of white book on psoriasis was written, and the WHO recognized psoriasis as an important and major disease. So that was very helpful. And maybe we can do something comparable for AD. If we join forces and then approach major organizations like the WHO, and so to increase the awareness for the disease, that will also have probably an impact on policymakers in the end.
Absolutely.
So it would be great if we could see something comparable to an initiative done in the psoriasis field. So I would love to see a collaboration between different professional societies dedicated to atopic dermatitis and also patient groups, that then approaches important organizations like the WHO to increase awareness for the disease at this level.
Absolutely. So what has that meant for psoriasis as a whole then? How is it now treated differently as a result of that white paper?
Oh, it has helped a lot. So, for example, psychological support for psoriasis patients is now being reimbursed in Germany if it's necessary, and a lot of additional support measures are now being paid for by the insurance companies. Of course, I cannot be 100% sure that this is only due to that WHO story, but it certainly helped a lot, and it was in the temporal context to that campaign.
Absolutely. And so would you say that the changes happened fairly quickly after that?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what can we do then as an AD community to make that happen?
So I think we, first of all, need to continue education of the physicians and increase awareness, because as we discussed, there's still a lot of misconception about the disease and maybe not sufficient awareness. And then I think we need to engage with policymakers, really. And this has to happen through joint efforts of patients and physicians and caregivers, I would say.
Absolutely. So let's pick up on that point of education amongst physicians. You know, always better ways to treat patients and provide the best possible care. What is the mindset of physicians at the moment? Obviously open to learning more constantly and improving. So how would you go about suggesting this happens?
I would say yes, physicians are open. At least in the meantime, they are open to more education because they have realized that we now have effective treatments available so that we can handle atopic dermatitis. At least many colleagues tell me that they have now more interest in that disease. And what we can do is to train the physicians on the different assessment tools that are available, that we educate them on the mental health impact of the disease and how to screen for impairment of mental health or even psychiatric comorbidities. So there's quite a lot we can do. And there's also a lot we need to do because AD is so complex, it's so multidimensional.
Absolutely. So it's important that we are striving to have access to that support and those communication tools. So give me some examples of some communication tools that are available that you've been using in Germany.
I can give you an example from my own department where we had a big initiative called shared decision making at the University Hospital Schleswig-Holstein. Within this campaign, all physicians were trained in structured communication and in involving the patient in decision making. And that was an initiative that was appreciated, first of all, by the physicians that participated, but then later on also by the patients. So we received a lot of positive feedback.
Absolutely. So they felt that they were being listened to more, and the physicians were able to ask the right questions and communicate in a better way. Okay, wonderful. So now here's the difficult one. So I think talking to you, I'm inspired about your vision and what's working and what needs to happen. But if I was to give you that crystal ball and to think, okay, 5 years from now, what has changed in the treatment of AD in 5 years' time? What would you want to see for patients?
It would be great to see that at least the more severely affected patients receive really a holistic care and management, that they have access to the best available treatments, and in the meantime we have very good treatments available, and that we also control the disease in the patients. So I mean, this is the ultimate goal of every management strategy. We cannot heal the disease, but we, in the meantime, are able to control the disease. But for this, we need to do appropriate assessments and then select the most appropriate treatment. This is what I would like to see.
Absolutely. So we're part of the way there, but we've got a long way to go, would you say?
Yeah. We're on the right way. We have made progress, but there's still a lot to do.
Absolutely. So, Professor Weidinger, thank you so much for providing your thoughts and really pertinent topics and some wonderful examples that you've shared over this 3 series. And it's fantastic to hear where we could be in the next 5 years, particularly after the journey of discussions that we've had. And it's also so clear, isn't it, to see in the AD community, patients, caregivers, physicians and policymakers included all have a huge part to play in striving for change in the next 5 years and beyond. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Professor. So let me just ask you, though, your closing thoughts. You mentioned there what we need to be doing to keep action, to keep listening, to keep talking, to make improvements and to inspire. What else?
Yeah, there's one point that is also important. I think we need to involve patients more in developing treatment plans and in the management strategies. This is what we nowadays call shared decision making, right? And patient-centered approaches, but it is really important in particular in a disease that is so variable across patients and also within patients over time. I think it is key to really deeply involve the patients themselves in the care for the disease.
Professor, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in and for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this and are able to use this as an opportunity to really inspire action in atopic dermatitis. Until next time, bye-bye.